How pitiful was this man? Just because he had the habit of bathing once every 3 weeks while living wild, his wife kicked him out of the house in the middle of the night. Carrying that resentment, he decided to survive alone on a deserted island, far from human civilization, determined to evolve into a true wild man. With no food or water, and armed only with a machete, he built a wilderness villa that looked no different from a luxury homestay. He even dug a pit trap and caught a wild boar to raise. Afraid of ghosts, he planted a garden of garlic in the middle of nature. Not only that, he claimed he caught a shark on vacation and grilled it for dinner. Life seemed almost royal. On a deserted island in the Pacific, a man rowed a small boat straight toward the shore. After landing safely, he asked fishermen to help unload a heavy suitcase. His supplies included a machete, a first aid kit, a satellite phone, and a solar charger for his camera. With only these tools, he believed he could survive 300 days without assistance. Watching the fishing boat leave, he felt lonely, but remembering his wife's harsh words fueled his anger and his vow never to return. He headed deep into the island's forest to explore. With no food, no water, and lacking everything, he picked up a branch to use as a fishing rod and sat by the beach. Soon he caught a black fish, overjoyed to finally have dinner. That night, he roasted the fish over a campfire, ate well, and slept soundly. The next morning, he took out the leftover half, only to discover ants had turned his breakfast into their buffet. Afterward, he gathered a bundle of wild leaves, planning to build a smokehouse to preserve more fish for the future. This didn't take too long. Thanks to experience and nimble hands, he quickly built the smoker. He cut pieces of fish, hung them up to test it. The aroma of smoked fish spread across the island. Finished, he gathered branches to build a shelter. Soon, the frame was done. Using palm leaves, he wove ropes to tie it steady. Then he covered it with leaves to complete the wild hut. Though it looked like a chicken coop, it was enough for him to lie inside and enjoy an afternoon nap. By evening, he carried a small box to a cave, cleared it out, removed his treasured watch, placed it inside, hid it under stones and dry leaves. Like an oath, his 300-day survival journey officially began. Next, he hacked at a young tree until it fell, then carried it across slippery rocks to the beach, used stones to set up an automatic fishing rod. After resting, he continued searching for resources. He found a snail, smashed it, boiled it in a rusty pot, and ate by the shore. Though just a small snail, he devoured it, because it was all he had. Afterward, he sat under a seaside tree, thinking of family, his wife, and the harsh words that hurt him. He'd rather live like a savage than return to that cold home. At night, he lay in the flimsy shelter, surrounded by buzzing mosquitoes, but still tried to sleep for the harsh journey ahead. By morning, only 2 days had passed, yet he already looked worn out. Realizing the roof wasn't waterproof, suddenly a heavy rain poured down. Luckily, he found a plastic sheet, spread it across one side, and kept out some of the water. The rain stopped, and he began showing his climbing skills, moving up the coconut tree like a gecko and cutting palm leaves with his knife. Although his movements seemed a bit unnecessary, he eventually reached the top, not to pick coconuts, but to cut leaves and sit down to weave. With his skillful hands, he quickly crafted waterproof roofing sheets from the coconut leaves, perfect for storms. After finishing enough sheets, he chopped down young coconut trees nearby to clear the ground, burned the leftover leaves, and made the place safe to live in. That morning, he heard the sound of a volcano erupting and decided to explore. Soon, he climbed to the summit, where thick smoke was rising. The volcano appeared both beautiful and dangerous. Standing there, he suddenly felt lonely, eyes welling with tears as he thought of his family. But then he remembered his wife's harsh words, and that pushed him to continue this wild life. He wandered through the forest in search of food but found no animals. Luckily, he discovered a mango tree. Starving, he climbed quickly, shaking the branches so hard that the whole tree shuddered, and mangoes fell one after another. Gathering them, he devoured the fruit like a starving prisoner finally set free. With strength restored, he checked nearby trees by scraping their bark, but they weren't what he needed. He kept chopping and testing until he found the right kind of tree was strong. fibrous bark. He collected a large pile and laid it out on the beach to dry under the sun. From this bark, he could make ropes to tie the leaf panels onto his shelter, reinforcing it. Now the roof no longer leaked, making his hideout much sturdier. Each small task helped ease the weight of loneliness. At night, he cooked a pot of coconut porridge, fragrant and nourishing, then roasted a sprouting young coconut over glowing embers. When it was ready, he split it open with his knife. The inside revealed thick, soft, snowy white flesh that smelled incredible. Using the shell as a spoon, he scooped mouthfuls and ate with delight, whispering, "Perfect." The next morning, he found himself standing by the shore with a handmade fishing rod. Within moments, a fish bit the hook. He pulled in a catch weighing over 5 pounds. Luck was on his side. By the end, he had caught 4 large fish. Afterward, he climbed a coconut tree again to cut more leaves. But his heart grew heavy, and he sat under the tree staring out at the sea, reflecting on life. Suddenly, gripped by restless thoughts, he ran toward the opposite beach, knife in hand. Sitting on the sand, he sank deeper into his solitude, as though imprisoned on this deserted island. Walking along the shoreline, he noticed trash scattered everywhere, plastic bottles lying across the sand, a stark reminder of humanity's neglect of the ocean. Nearby, a whole colony of crabs basked on the rocks, showing how abundant the island's resources truly were. He even stumbled upon a dry bamboo stalk washed ashore. It fit perfectly in his hands, so he carried it back, planning to put it to use. With a stick, he cleared the bamboo nodes, then carved a hole into a coconut shell and attached it neatly to the end of the tube. Just like that, a giant flute was born. He put it to his lips and blew. Strange yet cheerful sounds echoed out. Standing on a hillside, he played, while gazing at the scenery, letting the music lift his spirits. Later, he returned to strengthen his shelter with more woven palm leaves. Once finished, he wandered back to the rocky shore, stepping carefully across the slippery stones. He searched in vain for food but found no animals. Darkness fell, and the moon slowly rose above. Sitting inside his shelter, his hands were scraped raw from hard labor, with painful stings from strange insects. Staring at his swollen wounds, he reluctantly called the Ministry of Health for advice, then pulled out a first aid kit. Using safety pins, he pierced the wound directly. The pain was unbearable, but he gritted his teeth and endured. In the quiet night, his cries echoed hopelessly until the bandaging was done. Exhausted, he collapsed and slept until morning. At dawn, he hung his clothes to dry by the shore. Later, he sat before the camera, face heavy with sorrow, eyes revealing crushing loneliness, like he might break down if anyone asked if he was okay. His gaze screamed despair. Carrying that sadness, he dragged himself into the next day. Suddenly, a stranger appeared, saying his friend was also surviving on the island but had badly cut his finger while chopping coconuts. The man reenacted the careless act, testing the knife's sharpness with his own finger. In desperation, he begged for medical help. Faced with an urgent situation, he could not refuse and followed the stranger. Before long, they reached a rundown thatched hut. Inside, a bald man lay weakly, his finger poorly wrapped in cloth. Without delay, he pulled out his medical kit, poured disinfectant into a small container, and carefully cleaned the wound. Then he wrapped it with fresh gauze and secured it tightly with black tape. He even urged the man to get to a hospital quickly, otherwise, he might never see the sunlight again. The next day, after finishing the treatment, he helped tidy up around the thatched hut. Then he sat down to enjoy some coconut meat with his new companions. That evening, he decided to stay and chat with them, savoring the rare warmth of human company on this lonely island. The following morning, when he returned to his camp, he was stunned to see a boat racing towards shore. He hurried over to greet it. It turned out to be a group of tourists stopping by the island to explore. Without hesitation, he smiled brightly and welcomed them. To the visitors, it was their first time encountering a real-life wild man. They were amazed and friendly, following him as he guided them through the island's scenery. Together, they climbed hills and trekked deeper into the forest. 2 tourists couldn't resist snapping photos, as if documenting a rare discovery. They even gave him 2 bottles of beer, along with rice, garlic, and onions. These small gifts touched him deeply. But every gathering must end. The next day, he walked them to the beach to say goodbye. For the first time in ages, he had spoken and laughed with people again. In that brief moment, he no longer felt completely alone, yet as he watched their boat fade away, sadness crept back into his heart. Remembering his wife's cruel words, he steeled himself, determined to continue surviving on his own, where no one could hurt him anymore. That night, he enjoyed the cold beer before falling fast asleep. The tourists had warned him the rainy season was near, so he reinforced his shelter by layering coconut leaves on the roof. Then he went back to chopping trees. Realizing his knife had grown dull, he sharpened it again. Months passed, and he slowly grew accustomed to life on the island. His main meals consisted of just a few scraps of food. Wild roots and grated coconut flesh were boiled into a thin porridge, just enough to keep him going. While waiting for the food to cook, he sat beneath a tree, staring out at the sea, lost in thought about his life and his parents. He longed for a joyful Christmas, but in reality, all he had was a pot of watery porridge. Sitting by the fire, he ate his meager meal, painfully aware of the lack of protein. The next morning, a rainbow appeared faintly in the fresh sky. He cut open a plastic ball by the shore, then plunged into the cool water to refresh himself. But the loneliness was overwhelming, so he went to ask his bald companion, the man he had once saved, for a dog. Grateful, the man gave him a 9-month-old pup named Ga. Overjoyed, he finally had a friend to share the days with. As a token of thanks, he cleared weeds from the ground with his knife, then leveled the soil with tree branches. Into that fertile earth, he planted the garlic bulbs gifted by the tourists earlier, hoping they would bring a brighter future. While waiting for the garlic to sprout, he roamed the island, wandering from place to place. By a rocky shore, he discovered a cave and slipped inside for shade, curiously inspecting the space. As dusk fell, hunger gnawed at him again. It had been far too long since he'd eaten real protein. That night, fortune smiled, he caught a large fish. A 10-pound shark. Grateful for this blessing, he thanked the heavens and cut the meat into strips, placing them over the fire. He covered the fish with palm leaves, then buried it under a layer of earth to roast slowly. Exhausted, he fell asleep until morning. When he unearthed the fish, the aroma spread everywhere. The flesh was steaming hot, perfectly cooked. With this catch, he could eat for 3 days. Yet eating only fish would grow dull, so he resolved to hunt wild boar next. He ventured into the forest, searching for trails. Tracking wild boar was no easy task, but with his survival experience, he quickly spotted a trail. Judging by the tracks, it could have been a boar about 24 inches tall. He hoped to find one larger, maybe 32 inches long and 16 inches wide, to roast with coconut, a feast he dreamed of. Wandering further, he discovered a hollow tree filled with filthy water swarming with mosquitoes, undrinkable. Moving on, he found another boar trail and decided to set a trap. He dug a square pit large enough to swallow a boar, covered it with palm leaves, then camouflaged it with a layer of dry foliage. The trap was nearly invisible to the naked eye. While waiting for prey, his vegetable patch flourished within weeks. Sitting beside it, he stroked the young sprouts, imagining endless vegetarian meals. Later, he climbed a mountain to watch smoke rise from the volcano, falling into deep thought. A reckless idea crossed his mind: should he jump into the crater? Acting on impulse, he edged toward the rim and looked down. Lava spewed like the fiery eyes of a demon. Terrified, trembling at the edge, he chose life and led his dog back to camp. The next day, he pulled out his medical kit again. This time, he drove a thick injection needle straight into an infected wound on his hand, stabbing deep into the swelling. The pain was worse than being abandoned by his wife. Fearing he might lose his arm, he phoned a doctor. The doctor reassured him, "As long as it doesn't get infected, you'll keep your arm." He bandaged it loosely, then sat inside his shelter watching rain pour down. If within 24 hours infection spread, he would need a hospital. A grim thought. Though he admired the legendary one-armed hero, he prayed desperately to keep both arms. Watching the rain fall, he felt lost and uneasy. He could only hope that luck would be on his side. After reinforcing the roof several times, it finally stopped leaking. Satisfied, he rested, waiting for the rain to end so he could continue wandering. For him, doing nothing felt no different than being dead. When the rain stopped, he went to check the boar trap. To his surprise, a tiny piglet was struggling inside. He reached down and pulled it out. After all that effort, he couldn't believe he had only caught such a small thing. He cursed for a while, then decided to adopt it as his own. A few days later, his hand wound had healed. He roamed the forest with his dog, searching for resources. By chance, he discovered a large cave, spacious and perfect for living. Even better, it faced the sea. With a view like a 6-star hotel, back in his little garden, his watermelon plants had started to bear fruit. Overjoyed, he knew it was all thanks to his hard work. Carrying the piglet, he wandered through the forest and played with it. After enjoying the scenery, he returned and chopped trees into logs, carving their ends into sharp stakes. He built a pen to keep the piglet safe, preventing fights with his dog and chickens. The next day, he stumbled upon a tangled mass of vines. Cutting one open, drops of water trickled out. He drank straight from the stem, but the taste was strange, bitter, and burning. Unsure if it was safe, he returned to the shore. It was rainy season, and the sea level had risen, waves already swallowing his old fishing spot. It looked like a storm was brewing. Sitting in his shelter, deep in thought like a strategist, he braced himself. As expected, the storm arrived with fierce winds and trees shaking violently. Unsure if he could survive the night, he sat inside, praying. He prayed, hoping lightning wouldn't strike him. He wasn't ready to die in such a meaningless way. At night, loneliness gnawed at him. The emptiness wrapped around, keeping him restless and unable to sleep. What little rest he had became even more fragile as the storm raged on, thunder cracking across the sky like it was being torn apart. In that chaos, he wondered if he would live to see the next sunrise. Huddled inside his fragile shelter, with winds howling and trees crashing down around him, he braced himself. Yet, after a long night clinging to life against nature's fury, he made it through. Morning light broke across a clear, calm sky, almost unnaturally peaceful. He started the new day by picking up a dried coconut leaf stalk and turning it into a crude broom. Sweeping away fallen leaves, he cleared a neat little path, so clean it felt like stepping onto paradise itself. Later, he sat beside his loyal dog, his only true companion, quietly sharing his solitude. From the first seeds he had planted to now, nearly half a year had passed. His vegetables had sprouted strong, covering the once barren soil with green. Among them grew wild sugarcane and taro, gifts freely given by nature. When he went to check his watermelon patch, his joy was short-lived. Some fruits had rotted from lack of sunlight after the storm. The rest were still too small, fragile like newborns not yet ready to open their eyes. Refusing to waste time, he threw himself into work, tidying the shelter and chopping trees into even logs, his movements steady and precise like a skilled craftsman. After careful measuring, he began building. He shaped the logs into a simple reclining chair facing the sea. When he lay back on it, comfort washed over him, as though nature itself was cradling him. Not stopping there, he wove a mat out of palm leaves and spread it across the chair, making it softer and cleaner. Almost a year had passed since the day he first set foot on this deserted island. By now, he felt like he was evolving into a true wild man, living primitively, yet still full of vitality. In moments when his mind fell into emptiness, when there was nothing left to do, he would just sit quietly, gazing out at the endless ocean, letting his thoughts drift with the waves. Suddenly, memories of the little pig he once adopted came rushing back. He remembered that first day building a pen for it, only to wake up the next morning and find it gone without a trace. Deep down, he feared a tiger might have taken it. He had searched high and low countless times, but in the end, all his efforts led to nothing. The memories played before him like a slow-motion reel. From the very first moment he met that piglet, he felt something special, an odd, almost parental bond he couldn't explain. From then on, he had treated it like his own child, raising and caring for it day after day, but now, all that effort had only left him with emptiness. The piglet was gone. The sting of abandonment caught in his throat, leaving him speechless with grief. In a moment of unbearable loneliness, he ran to the shore and lit a massive bonfire, as if trying to burn away the weight in his chest. Just then, by pure chance, a Russian fishing boat passed by. He ripped off his shirt and waved frantically, clinging to hope like a drowning man gasping for air. By sheer luck, they saw him and steered ashore in time. After a few emotional embraces, he eagerly led them to see the humble home he had built with his bare hands and recounted his entire grueling survival journey. The foreign fishermen were moved by his unyielding will to live. They even gifted him a piece of beef, the first bite of it he had tasted in nearly a year, along with some rich, fragrant cheese. In that moment, he realized something. True paradise wasn't this wilderness, but civilized society, but it didn't stop there. He invited his new friends deeper into the jungle, letting them experience survival firsthand. He taught them how to build shelters, start fires, find water, and set traps, passing down his hard-earned wisdom like a true survival instructor. With a laugh, he joked, "If your wife ever leaves you, at least you'll know how to survive, just like me." Finally, he brought them to the edge of the magnificent volcano, both awe-inspiring and terrifying at the same time. Pointing down into its fiery depths, he smiled and said, "If one day life becomes too hopeless, jumping down there might be an option too." He even took his students to the beach, where they sat on the sand while he gave a heartfelt sermon, reflecting on life and resilience. Later, he returned to the cave where he had buried his watch. Digging it up, he found it still intact, though the battery was long dead and the hands had stopped moving. He strapped it back onto his wrist and carved new notches into a wooden post, marking the passing days. By his count, it had now been exactly 300 days since he first set foot on the island. He felt stronger than ever, convinced that his abilities were no longer ordinary, that he had reached the highest realm of survival mastery. He even dreamed of one day training more students, so that if they ever found themselves abandoned by life, they too could rise again through sheer willpower. Taking one last look at the wild villa that had sheltered him from sun and rain, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of nostalgia. Yet, as visions of city food filled his mind, the choice became clear. With a heavy heart but a hopeful spirit, he boarded the yacht with his new companions and set sail, back to the world of mankind. If something feels off, let us know in the comments so we can make every story even better, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.